welcome to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. For the best conversations in AEW, WWE, NXT, and New Japan Pro Wrestling, make sure you subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. So, Ralph, a lot of war of words being exchanged here between AEW and WWE.
Yep.
Jim Ross getting involved, Seth Rollins getting involved, now Becky Lynch getting involved. Outside the AEW and WWE bubble, people are commenting on that, whether you're part of the wrestling Twitter, if you're CM Punk, Jim Cornette, everyone has a say in this matter.
Disco Inferno, Conan, it's an endless list of people who are throwing their point of view into the conversation.
They definitely are, but I think what most people are talking about here is what happened earlier last week where there was a live Q&A that Seth Rollins was involved.
Yep.
A fan asked him if Kenny Omega were to have a match with Seth Rollins, where should it be? And basically, Seth Rollins said, if he's ready to leave his minor league promotion, we're waiting here for you, the biggest stage of all, WrestleMania. Then Jim Ross on his podcast, Grilling JR, said, listen, I like Seth Rollins. Maybe one day he'll get over like his girlfriend.
Right.
Obviously, a slap in the face there. Then Becky Lynch comes in and chimes in saying that, you know what, JR, you're a great announcer, but go to your locker room and announce that I can beat every one of your women's roster twice on Sunday. So is this good or bad for the wrestling industry?
I think overall it's good. I mean, again, these are two companies that are definitely going to be, at competition going forward from here on out. And I said this was going to be a competition from the very beginning. From the second that, the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega, all of those guys decided to get together and create their own promotion rather than sign with WWE. From the second that Jon Moxley decided he was going to leave the WWE and go join AEW and then crap on WWE creative on the way out. That's really where you knew this was going to be a competition. I think despite the fact that you can watch both, I think people are certainly choosing sides in this. So that means people are certainly getting involved in talking about it and interested in putting their point of view out there. And I think that's good for the industry because it means that people are discussing whether it's, pro WWE, pro AEW, whatever it may be. At least people are talking about professional wrestling and it's not just like, well, who cares about it?
Right. I mean, we haven't had this kind of heated debate over two promotions since the late 90s and early 2000s with WCW and WWE, and everyone wants to talk about, the Wednesday night wars with AEW and NXT. People saying that the whole counter programming, we got this whole talked about here where, WWE puts the Evolve show the same night as Fight for the Fallen, even though the Evolve show was already scheduled months in advance before Fight for the Fallen. They do put it on the WWE network. We get Cody saying you can't counter program us. But then this past Friday, they re-air AEW, like an extended version of it on Friday when Fox Sports 1 was airing this past SmackDown. Now, the ratings have not come out yet since we are recording this, so hopefully those go out and we'll figure those out and see how AEW really affected those ratings. Yep. But like it's funny where we're seeing these jabs from both sides.
Yep.
Cody's taking jabs. In fact, this last episode of Dynamite, he took a jab at WWE saying there's no fourth wall. I can come out into the ring, go through the barricade and beat you up in the skybox, referring to Jericho. And it's just, I like this whole war of words.
Right.
Honestly.
So there's a lot there. I think that as far as counter programming WWE, if I'm AEW, I actually think that was smart on their behalf, because if you look at the trends from, any of the ratings, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, people usually don't stay tuned into the product for the entirety of the 3 hours or the 2 hours if it's SmackDown, right? So they're channel surfing. And I think the thought might have been, not so much let's program SmackDown. Let's put our product on at the same time as the WWE product and let's see how we do. Let's see if people are changing the channels and say, hey, we know SmackDown's going to be on Friday night, but if people are going to change the channel anyway, maybe they come across our product and they're like, oh, well, there's this other promotion and wait a minute. I know this guy. That's Jericho and he's from WWE. So think it was smart on their behalf. As far as Cody is concerned, and some of the comments he made on Dynamite, I definitely thought that was the best segment of the night. That's the segment that I think most people were talking about. Chris Jericho has been amazing since his run as the champion AEW, and Cody's comments really speak to the disenfranchised fan base that essentially has left WWE, because I feel like WWE has done them wrong for X amount of years, but they really didn't have anything else to turn to. So when he says those things about, let's not pretend there's an invisible wall or whatever the case may be, it speaks directly to the hardcore fan base who feels like they were alienated by WWE. So they're into that type of stuff. And as long as they continue to do those things and the fans get into it and the crowd is rowdy and into the segments, that's going to benefit AEW in the long run.
Now, I do want to bring up CM Punk because, why not? If CM Punk is relevant in the conversation, we got to throw him in there, right? Because for the last 5 years, CM Punk is always talked about. And he actually had something to say about this where he said, you know what? AEW needs to start focusing on AEW and stop taking these jabs at WWE. And I know other wrestling fans that I've talked to outside the show have said the same thing.
Yeah.
Do you think this has to stop with AEW where Kenny and the Bucks make their jabs on being the elite? Cody has his says on the live shows, and it might actually stop what Seth Rollins says. What, back in April where Triple H called them a pissant t-shirt company or whatever the exact quote was. Should they be focusing on AEW and stop with these little jabs?
I don't mind it so much. And again, it all depends on the context and what's said specifically. Like what Cody did on Dynamite, I didn't have an issue with, because again, it speaks directly to their fan base and what they want to hear and what's going to get them excited. As far as, what CM Punk is saying, as far as them being just focusing on their product alone, I actually feel like they have focused a lot on just their product mostly. When you when you look at the shows to this point, they've been able to highlight certain guys that you wouldn't normally hear of. Darby Allin, a guy like Jimmy Havoc, who doesn't necessarily pass the eye test, certainly not for a WWE superstar. Guys like that, Orange Cassidy, Marco Stunt, they're doing those things despite the stigma that, guys like that or of that stature, of that build, they wouldn't get over in WWE. Right. They probably wouldn't even be given a chance. So I feel like they are focusing enough on their product where it's not just like they're focusing on going after WWE and focusing on what WWE is doing. If you watch Dynamite in comparison to NXT or Raw or SmackDown, it definitely feels different. It definitely has a different vibe to it. And as long as they continue to focus on being different from the WWE, I think they'll be successful.
It's funny, like there are definitely things that differentiate from each other. AEW doing certain things, WWE does their thing that they've, has worked since the mid 80s.
Yep.
But there's a lot of things I think people don't even notice or turn a blind eye on that AEW does that also WWE does. There are like, I don't know like exact specifics, but the one that comes to mind is rules that, we talk about the ending of Hell in a Cell.
Yep.
Which was a no contest, and how could a Hell in a Cell end in a no contest? But then a couple weeks later, we get a Philly street fight and there's a rope break. Now I understand the commentary explained that there was rope breaks, but the crowd did not know that. Yep. And they're chanting, it's a street fight.
Yeah.
So I think in small aspects, if you really look for it, there are a little bit of cases where AEW does do things WWE does. So,
I mean, look at the conversation we had last week. A couple people commented when we reviewed the show, and I pointed out that, Private Party and Lucha Brothers was, a good show of athleticism, but the match was a little clunky. There were a few weird spots. It was some botches here and there. And the biggest thing was, Pentagon going for the pin despite not being the legal man. People were like, oh, you're being nitpicky, but, and they're willing to overlook the small details, as people have called it. Now, AEW has been a company that's been really good at focusing on the small details, especially when it comes to progressing storylines.
Yes.
That's the one thing that people are so critical of WWE of not doing well. And that's part of the reason why people stopped watching WWE, because they'll do something one week and then the next week it's all but forgotten. Look at the whole thing with Eric Rowan and Roman Reigns. Eric Rowan is now on Raw, Roman Reigns is on SmackDown, Daniel Bryan's on SmackDown, and it's kind of like that whole thing
got dropped.
Served no purpose. So AEW has focused on the small details, so they should continue to focus on the small details, and because that's essentially what's gotten them to the dance. Their storylines make sense. Pay attention to the tag team stuff. All of those things matter. If people are going to be critical of WWE for those things, they should be critical of AEW as well, because it's just holding them accountable.
Right. Now let's talk about Becky Lynch and her comments with the whole, she could beat anyone in the AEW women's roster twice on Sunday. Do you feel like she just kind of threw herself into this conversation really for no reason? I understand she is the fiance of Seth Rollins.
Yeah. I think she's really just rebutting what JR said. She's taken an opportunity to speak to the AEW fan base in a way, indirectly, right? Because JR JR is the one that brought her up.
True.
So why not get some brownie points with that fan base? I don't really think if you're AEW hardcore fans that don't watch it WWE, they're going to all of a sudden start watching it because she said something like this. Out of all of this, I kind of feel bad for Seth Rollins, because WWE, as good as Seth Rollins is, he always comes across as the bad guy, right? So his comments about Kenny Omega, I feel like, the hardcore fans look at Kenny Omega as like, essentially the best wrestler in the world. Certainly Seth Rollins is in that conversation, but he's in a company that's not really interested in putting on the best matches. They're more about the brand itself, representing WWE as a brand and expanding and all of that stuff. So as good as he is, he can't really showcase how good he can be. Maybe sometimes on the main event of a pay-per-view, but for the most part, it's very status quo type wrestling. So when he goes after guys like Kenny Omega or Will Ospreay, the hardcore fan base that is attracted to New Japan Pro Wrestling or AEW are the guys that are going to speak out against him, because WWE fans just aren't really all that interested in the back and forth banter on social media, I feel like. So he gets a bad rap out of all of it.
True. And of course, this isn't the first time Seth Rollins has made comments on guys outside of WWE. Yeah. We know the Twitter war that happened between him and Will Ospreay over the summer. Obviously, Kenny Omega saying his comments with the whole NXT is developmental talent. He would be the main event over their, curtain jerk match. It's like, you really think about this and it's like, who really started this? Was it Kenny Omega? Was it the Young Bucks and Cody way back in January when they had their rally? Was it Triple H when he said that they're a pissant company? Was it Seth Rollins that can't keep his fingers still in front of a keyboard? But at the end of the day, if you're a wrestling fan, why not like it all?
Exactly. I like it all. But there are people that are certainly choosing sides.
Right. And we see it in the comments too. Like, people will totally trash WWE. Even when they put on a good show, they'll say that it sucks and didn't do anything. And AEW could put on the worst show in the world and they'll think it's 5 stars, or, I can't wait to watch it again. Yep. And it's the same. There's guys in WWE that they're pro WWE fans that think everything they do is great. AEW is going to, get bought out by Vince in a month's time. And even Jim Cornette actually said something to those lines.
Jim Cornette said eventually NXT will beat AEW in the ratings.
Yes.
Whether it's 2 years, 5 years, however long, he said it just, and I don't know if NXT is ever going to surpass AEW in the ratings or be a more popular show. The one thing he did say that I do agree with is right now it's essentially WWE C show going against the best that AEW has to offer, and they're able to hang with them. Now, I think to kind of go off what Chris Jericho said, because Chris Jericho, like Kenny Omega, referred to NXT as the minor leagues of the WWE. They're not wrong. I mean, NXT is essentially their developmental system. Mm-hmm. Going back to when it was, I believe, Florida Championship Wrestling? Yes. That was where people went to train and came up, or trained before they came up to the main roster. So they're not wrong in saying that. I know that NXT certainly has been probably the better program over the last several years in comparison to Raw and SmackDown and the main roster. But Jericho is right. When you look at AEW, they're top tier guys. They're Jerichos, they're Moxleys. guys that are known all over the world because they worked in multiple companies and had success in WWE specifically, they are very well known. Jim Ross, you could throw his name out there. When you look at NXT, there are guys that are very accomplished and very good, but if you show them to a casual fan, they aren't going to really know who they are unless you're a hardcore fan that follows NXT. So I certainly understand where he's coming from with that.
Right. Now, what happens when NXT moves out of Full Sail and they become a touring brand and they're treated as they should be, like a third WWE brand and not just the developmental system? Does this kind of turn the tide and people might take it a little bit more seriously? I think part of the problem with this whole Wednesday Night War thing is you could watch NXT the next day on the WWE Network. Most people are DVRing NXT and watching AEW live. So that's why they're winning the ratings. At some point, NXT is going to make changes where, you know what? You can't miss this.
Right.
You either have to watch it live and DVR AEW or you're going to miss it.
Yeah. And AEW is still benefiting from the fact that their show is still very new and very fresh. So everything that they're presenting, because people are different wrestling promotions and under different contracts with other companies, everything seems fresh because everybody is now in AEW facing each other and it seems new to them.
Mm-hmm.
With NXT, despite having a lot of talented guys, a lot of the people that are on that roster have faced each other. And if you followed it for the last several years, whether they bring Kevin Owens back, they bring Asuka back, Finn Balor, we've already seen them on WWE product, whether it's Raw, SmackDown, or NXT. So it still doesn't feel fresh in a sense. But, I think both companies in the wrestling industry are just still waiting for the next big thing. You never know who it's going to be, and you never know when it's going to happen. You don't know when a Rock or a Steve Austin or a Hulk Hogan or a Cena is going to, emerge. That guy could be in AEW, that guy could be in WWE, that guy could be in NXT. But in order to get to that next level, I feel like there's just waiting for somebody to emerge like that, and I don't know where that person is. And
it could be Cody. It could be.
You never know. I mean, it's weird because I think right now, as successful as AEW is, they're still very much like the underground band that has. I don't know if somebody made that comparison before, but that's kind of like what I compare them to. Very, very popular with their hardcore fan base, but a lot of people still don't know who they are, and they're just waiting for their one big hit. They're one guy that can take that company to the next level. Jericho is certainly in a position where people are going to know who he is because of his years within the wrestling industry, specifically during the Attitude Era, which was the biggest era in professional wrestling history. Arguably, probably was. Most people were watching it then. But they're still waiting for that one guy to emerge, as is WWE, because, since Cena has left professional wrestling, as much as polarizing as he is, he was a huge draw. Mm-hmm. You look at Raw when Hogan and Ric Flair went back, the huge spike in terms of, viewership and stuff during their segment. Yeah. Ratings-wise, there was a big spike in that. You haven't really seen that on any other show where you can point to it and be like, whether it's Becky Lynch, Seth Rollins, Kenny Omega, no one can draw, or nobody has that draw power like that right now in the professional wrestling industry.
True.
So they're both kind of looking for that, I think.
They're all waiting for Kazuchika Okada to be a free agent. There's the draw. Okada. No, but one last thing I do want to say about this. I think there's some wrestlers out there that I think honestly are just having fun with this AEW, WWE thing. And one more importantly that comes to mind is Randy Orton.
Yep.
Obviously, people know his contract is running out. People know Luke Harper's contract is running out and the Revival's contract are running out. And as far as we know, neither one of them have re-signed their contract. So Randy Orton found some sign on the wall that said elite level.
Yep.
Points to it. Goes, okay, I'll put this on Instagram. Tag Luke Harper. Tag both guys of the Revival. Tag Cody Rhodes. And you figure people are going to be talking about that.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So,
I wonder how Vince feels about that.
Well, considering Randy Orton basically was the number 2 behind Cena for a long time. And, people recognize him maybe as one of the top guys in WWE for the last 15 years. Already saw what Jericho did to him, as loyal as he was. Vince, I don't know. Either he knows it's all a joke and, just trolling the fans, or he's a little worried.
Orton is interesting in this sense. It seemed like he was going down the path of being one of those guys that was, one of the guys that WWE was forcing down the throats of the fans, and people were really pushing back against a lot of his title reigns and a lot of the success he was having. Then he went away for a little bit. He came back. He wasn't necessarily put in a position where he held the title. And people started getting into him again.
Yeah.
So he was able to overcome the stigma of, being one of the guys that the fans just, we're not going to accept him, whatever. I feel like if he went to AEW, it definitely would be newsworthy. It would be a good catch for them because, like you said, he's a top level talent in all of the professional wrestling industry. And I'd love to see what he could do when he isn't as scripted as WWE, members are. So like their talent, we know that they a lot of their promos are scripted. Some of the stuff that he was saying and some of the promos he was cutting specifically when he was going against Kofi Kingston was very good.
Yeah.
So if he was given a mic and able to cut promos without having a script in front of him, I think he could get to like a whole new level, and I think he'd be really over with their fans.
Here's the thing. I think while there's a lot of scripted promos out there, I think there are cases where Vince or whoever the writers are give certain guys a little leeway to branch out.
He might be one of them.
He might be one of them.
I think Owens has a certain level of freedom with his.
Maybe. So I think we've already kind of seen what we're getting. Maybe not to the fullest level it could be, but I think we're getting it. And I think it's kind of funny because we had that storyline that he had with AJ a while back where, you know what, I'm the big guy from WWE, had this big successful career, and you're just getting here at the tail end of your career because you're too busy with the bingo halls and being an indie darling and, getting recognition from the fat guy in the basement with his mom, as opposed to the millions and millions of fans that watch and pay for WrestleMania and stuff like that. I wonder if they'd go around that route with him if he ever was in AEW. That'd be an interesting way to bring him in.
Well, I feel like when you look at WWE and you look at Corbin, that's what I wish they'd do with him. I wish they'd let Corbin, if you follow his Twitter account, he's really good at trolling the certain fan base that is loyal to AEW and probably New Japan and that specific fan base, because they're the fan base that really does not like him, right?
Yeah.
If they let him go out and cut promos on that fan base specifically and say certain things, I think he could get over or be more accepted within, the WWE fan base. But unfortunately now he's kind of pigeonholed into being this silly, childish king character.
Right.
But that's just WWE.
He does get a few with Roman Reigns out of it.
Yeah.
That's a plus.
We all know where that's going to go.
Let us know in the comments what you think of this whole war of words between AEW and WWE in the comments below. Don't forget to share this all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. And for the best conversations in AEW, WWE, NXT, and New Japan Pro Wrestling, subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti. Thank you for watching the Squared Circle Psychobabble.